Hey there, welcome to the channel. If you're looking for the perfect way to unwind and drift off to sleep, you're in the right place. Tonight, we've got a whole hour of some of the most interesting and emotional Reddit stories from crazy family. Dramas to heartwarming moments to help you relax and escape the day. So get comfortable, let go of your worries, and let these stories carry you into a peaceful sleep. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoy this, and make sure to subscribe for more stories to relax to in the future. Now let's get started and dive into tonight's tales. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let's fall asleep together. Enjoy. I, 28F, recently got married to my husband, Greg, 31M, in a small but beautiful ceremony about 4 months ago. It wasn't a huge wedding, just close friends and family, around 60 guests, nothing flashy or Instagram influencer level, just elegant and personal. We planned it ourselves over a year, paid for almost everything out of pocket, and were incredibly proud of how it all turned out. My family has always been a bit chaotic. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings. My brothers, Luke, 35M, and Aaron, 33M, and my sister Ivy, 30F. Growing up, Ivy and I were very close, but our relationship shifted drastically in our early 20s. Ivy's always been a bit self-centered, the kind of person who views the world in terms of how it relates to her. When I graduated college, she made it about how she didn't get the same opportunities. When I got my dream job, she said it must be nice to know what you want to do. When I got engaged, she cried about being single and told me she wished I would wait a little longer, so she didn't feel left behind. Still, I tried to keep her close. I asked her to be my maid of honor, hoping it would bring us together. At first, she seemed thrilled. But as the months went on, she started making it clear that she didn't love not being the center of attention. Every phone call had a subtle dig. When I picked a simple A-line gown, she said it was a little safe, don't you think? When I told her I was doing my own makeup, she laughed and said, well, let's hope the lighting is kind. She constantly suggested we should just elope and have a party later, because weddings are a waste of money. It got exhausting, but I let most of it roll off my back. The real issue started about 2 months before the wedding. Ivy began dating a guy named Max. She met him at a friend's engagement party, and within 3 weeks she was calling him the one. I don't judge fast-moving relationships, but Max gave me weird vibes immediately. He was very forward, talked constantly about himself, made slightly inappropriate jokes, and seemed to enjoy putting people down in a way he disguised as teasing. At dinner once I mentioned how I was doing my centerpieces by hand, and Max said, aren't you a little old for arts and crafts? With this smug little laugh. I didn't say anything because Ivy seemed happy, and I didn't want to rock the photo. But when it came to the guest list, I had one rule: no +1s for anyone who wasn't in a long-term relationship or engaged. This wasn't a budget issue. It was a space and vibe issue. We had a very tight venue capacity and wanted to keep it intimate. Everyone knew the rule months in advance. Even some of Greg's cousins didn't get to bring their significant others because they'd only been dating a few months. Ivy, of course, wanted Max to come. I explained gently that Max wasn't invited because they'd only been dating a few weeks at that point, and it would be unfair to other guests. She said she understood, but then proceeded to bring it up constantly. She'd say things like, it's just such a shame I'll be sitting alone, or, well, I guess I'll just come late so I don't have to third wheel everything. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, I found out from my friend Lana, one of the bridesmaids, that Ivy was planning to bring Max anyway. I didn't want to believe it, but I confronted Ivy directly and asked her if it was true. She looked at me with this faux innocent expression and said, well, I thought maybe you'd changed your mind by now. Max already took the time off work. I reminded her firmly that Max was not invited, that this wasn't a discussion. And if she brought him, they would both be asked to leave. I said it as kindly as I could, but I was dead serious. She said I was being ridiculous and cold, that it was just one person, that she'd never forgive me if I embarrassed her. Like that. I told her I wasn't trying to embarrass her, I just wanted to stick to the boundaries we set. She hung up on me and didn't speak to me again until the rehearsal dinner. At the rehearsal, Ivy showed up late, didn't acknowledge me, and barely followed the program. During the dinner, She made a toast that was entirely about her. I wish I was exaggerating. She literally opened with, "As someone who's also been in serious relationships," and went on to talk about how hard dating was in today's world and how some people get lucky sooner than others. I was mortified. The day of the wedding came. I was anxious the whole morning, worried she'd pull something. She showed up to the venue in a dress that was clearly a shade of almost white. Technically it was champagne, but under the lights it looked ivory. Several people commented on it, including my mom. Then, during the pre-ceremony photo session, Ivy said she wasn't feeling well and stepped away for a bit. I figured maybe she was getting cold feet about standing up with me, or just still upset about Max. But when I walked out to check on her, Max was there. He was just there, at the venue, dressed in a suit, hugging her. She saw me, startled, and immediately launched into excuses. I didn't think it would be a big deal if he just came to say hi before the ceremony. I completely lost it. I told Max to leave. He tried to argue, said he wasn't even staying for the dinner. I said I didn't care. He was not invited. He looked to Ivy for backup, and she just stared at me like I was the villain. Greg came over and backed me up. Eventually, Max left, but not before making a snide comment about how I was setting the tone for a very controlling marriage. Ivy sulked the entire ceremony. She smiled for the photos, but you could tell she was fuming underneath. During the reception, she barely danced, didn't give the planned speech, and left early without saying goodbye. Since the wedding, she hasn't spoken to me, not once. She didn't thank me for including her, didn't apologize, didn't explain. She blocked me on social media and told my mom she needed space from people who think they can dictate her life. My mom thinks I should reach out first, that I should be the bigger person because weddings are emotional, and Ivy was just hurt. But I feel like I was the one disrespected. I had one boundary. One. And she not only tried to ignore it, but lied to me, and involved someone I explicitly said wasn't welcome. Now, some of my extended family, who weren't even at the wedding, are saying I was too harsh, that I should have just let Max come and avoided the drama, that I ruined my own day by being inflexible, but I don't see it that way. I stuck to my boundary. I didn't scream or make a scene. I just asked someone not to attend an event they weren't invited to. And now I'm the villain? So, am I the a-hole for standing firm and kicking my sister's boyfriend out of my wedding? Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my grandmother live with us, even though she raised me? Hi Reddit, throwaway account because this is going to be long and messy, and a few family members know my main. I, 29F, am in a massive conflict with my family right now, particularly my grandmother, 75F, who raised me after my mother passed away when I was 8. Before anyone assumes I'm heartless, let me give you some backstory. My mom was a single mother. My father was never in the picture, and I never even met him. She passed away suddenly when I was in the 3rd grade due to a brain aneurysm. It was devastating. I was placed in the care of my maternal grandmother, Linda, who took me in. She was in her 50s at the time, and although she wasn't exactly warm and cuddly, she did take care of me. She fed me, clothed me, and made sure I went to school. But that was kind of it. Emotionally, she was distant, critical, really. She never hugged me, never told me she loved me. If I cried, she'd tell me to stop being dramatic or crying. For attention. If I did well in school, she'd say, "That's what you're supposed to do." She never allowed sleepovers or birthday parties, and if I asked why, she'd say, "We're not doing that nonsense." I wasn't allowed to talk back or ask questions. Her word was law. There was always this lingering sense that I was a burden. As I got older, I started recognizing how different my life was from my peers. Other kids talked about how their guardians encouraged them, cheered them on at sports games, or let them decorate their rooms. I wasn't allowed to put anything on my walls. When I got a part-time job in high school, she started charging me $200 a month for rent. I was 16. I tried to stay grateful. She did take me in, and I know that wasn't something she was obligated to do, but there was no warmth. It always felt like I owed her something, like I should be repaying a debt for simply existing in her house. Fast forward to now. I'm married to a wonderful man, 31M, named Liam, and we have a 2-year-old daughter named Grace. We both work full-time, and we recently bought our first home, a modest but cozy 3-bedroom ranch in the suburbs. We've spent the last 2 years making it our own, and finally feel like we're in a stable, happy place. About 2 months ago, my uncle, my mom's brother, called me to say that Grandma Linda was struggling. She'd fallen twice in 1 week, and he found out she was behind on her utility bills and rent. She's been living alone in the same apartment for over 20 years. Apparently, she'd been hiding just how bad things were. He told me she needed someone to take her in and suggested it should be me since she raised you and you owe her that much. That phrase, "you owe her," triggered something deep in me. I've been hearing that all my life. Every time I wanted to go to therapy to unpack my childhood, I'd talk myself out of it because she took care of you when no one else would. But I told my uncle that Liam and I were not in a place to have someone else move in with us. That Grace is a toddler. We both work, and we don't have the capacity, emotionally, mentally, or logistically, to be caretakers right now. He pushed, said it would only be for a few months. I pushed back, told him maybe he could take her in, or maybe Grandma could apply for senior housing or assisted living options. He got irritated and said, "You're her daughter in all but name, you owe her." I told him I'd talk to Liam and hung up. That night, I explained everything to Liam. He listened quietly, then said he supported me 100% in whatever decision I made, but that he didn't feel comfortable having her in the house, especially not around Grace. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until he said that. It was such a relief, because truthfully, I don't want her in my home, not because I don't care, but because I do. About my own family, my peace, and protecting the healthy, warm environment we've built. I told my uncle no the next day. I said we could help her financially for a short while and assist in finding resources, but we couldn't take her in. He flipped, said I was choosing money over family, called me ungrateful, and accused me of abandoning the woman who gave up her golden years to raise me. Soon after, I started getting texts from cousins I haven't spoken to in years, all saying variations of the same thing, that I'm cold, heartless, and selfish. One even wrote, "I hope your daughter doesn't treat you the way you're treating your grandma." I blocked that one. Then, last week, I got a long letter in the mail from Grandma herself. She doesn't text or email. She's very old-fashioned. The letter was complicated. She said she never asked to be my guardian, but she did what she had to do because family takes care of their own. She said she wasn't perfect, but that I always had a roof over my head and food in my belly. She wrote, "I didn't beat you, I didn't starve you, and I didn't abandon you. That should count for something." She ended the letter saying she didn't expect to live much longer and couldn't believe I'd let her rot alone in a cold apartment after all she did for me. It wrecked me. For days, I second-guessed myself. I kept thinking, what if I'm being selfish? What if this is one of those situations where I'll look back in 10 years and feel ashamed? Liam keeps reassuring me that I'm not doing anything wrong, that offering financial support and logistical help is more than enough. But the guilt is clawing at me. Every time I rock my daughter to sleep, I wonder what kind of person she'll grow up to be. Would I want her to take me in if I needed help? What if I'm modeling coldness instead of compassion? Still, I keep coming back to one fact. My grandmother did what she felt obligated to do, not what she wanted to do. And in doing so, she made me feel like a burden every single day of my childhood. I don't want to raise my daughter in a house where I feel on edge, resentful, or emotionally manipulated. I don't want to relive my trauma daily just to appease someone who can't even admit that she was emotionally unavailable. So, am I the a-hole for saying no? I, 33F, live with my husband Mark, 35M, and we've been married for 6 years. We met through mutual friends, dated for about 2 years, and got married. Things were great between us for the most part. We both work demanding jobs. He's in finance, I'm in UX design, and we live in a mid-sized city where both of our families are within driving distance. The topic of children had always been a someday idea, but we were both on the same page. Not now, maybe eventually. But this story isn't really about Mark and me. It's about Mark's sister, Erin, 29F, and what happened over the course of the past 8 months, and why eventually I told her she was no longer welcome in our home, possibly ever again. Erin had always been a bit of a wild card in the C family. She's the youngest of 3 siblings, Mark, their middle brother Jason, and Erin. Their parents are nice people, a bit old-fashioned but welcoming. Erin's the classic free spirit. She's bounced between jobs, tried everything from teaching yoga to starting a baking business that lasted 6 months, and eventually settled into nannying and part-time gigs. She was engaged once briefly, but it ended when her fiancé realized they wanted vastly different lives. Since then, she's been a little adrift. Now, I've always tried to be supportive of Erin. I've offered to review her resumes, connect her to people I know in design when she said she was interested, and even helped her build a small website for her tutoring side hustle. We aren't close, but I've made an effort. However, things shifted dramatically last fall when Erin found herself in a tough spot. She was living with roommates, and according to her, they were toxic and invasive. She claimed they stole food, let their pets run wild, and made the place feel unsafe. Erin asked Mark and me if she could stay with us just for a few weeks while she found something better. At the time, we had a finished basement with a pull-out couch, her own bathroom, and even a small kitchenette setup. It wasn't luxury, but it was comfortable. We said yes, partly because we felt for her, partly because she had nowhere else to go. The first week went fine. Erin was polite, respectful, stayed mostly in the basement. She even helped us cook dinner one night. But by the second week, things started slipping. Her stuff began migrating upstairs. First, it was just a few things in the hallway closet. Then her makeup was suddenly in our bathroom. Then a pile of laundry in our guest room. I asked her gently to please keep her stuff in the basement, and she got defensive. I thought this was a shared space. Mark brushed it off. "She's going through a lot," he said. "Don't make a big deal out of it." Then came the real problem. Erin didn't leave. 2 weeks turned into a month. A month turned into 2. Every time I brought up the subject of her moving out, she had a reason why she couldn't. The market's crazy right now. I just lost out on a great apartment to someone with better credit. I can't afford first and last month's rent yet. I started getting more direct. I asked her if she was actively applying for places. She said she was, but when I offered to help her look, she declined. "It's not your responsibility," she'd say. "I just need time." By month 3, Erin had completely stopped trying to keep the peace. She started helping herself to our groceries without asking. I'd meal prep for the week and come home to find half of it eaten. I confronted her and she laughed it off. "You're such a good cook, I couldn't resist." She also started hosting guests, friends, even a couple of dates, without asking. I walked into my kitchen one Saturday morning in my robe to find 2 strangers sitting at the table drinking coffee Erin made with our beans and oat milk. When I asked who they were, Erin chimed in from the couch. "This is Jordan and Tiff. They spent the night." "Hope that's cool." Mark still tried to be the peacemaker. "She's just in a weird place right now," he'd say. "You know how hard it's been for her." And then she started borrowing my clothes, not just a sweater here or there. I'd find my nicest blouses missing, a pair of boots I saved for special occasions, jewelry, and she didn't ask. She just helped herself. I confronted her one day after seeing her post a selfie on Instagram, wearing a silk shirt of mine that I hadn't even worn yet. She shrugged. "You weren't wearing it." "I thought you'd be cool about it." I was not cool about it. I told her flat out, "Stop taking my things, ask before using the kitchen, and please, give us a timeline for moving out." That was when things got really ugly. Erin told Mark I was hostile and controlling, that I made her feel unwelcome and judged. She cried to their mom, who then called Mark and asked him why I was being so harsh to sweet Erin. Mark tried to mediate, but I told him I was at my limit. I didn't want Erin in the house anymore. It wasn't temporary anymore. It was a hostile takeover. We gave her a firm deadline, 2 weeks to move out. She was furious. "You said I could stay until I got back on my feet," she screamed at us one night. "Well, guess what? I'm not on my feet yet. Thanks for kicking me when I'm down." I reminded her that this had been going on for months, that we had bills, that this was our home. She wouldn't listen. The final straw came a few nights before her move-out date. I came home late from work. Mark wasn't home yet. I walked into the kitchen and found Erin going through my purse. I froze. "What are you doing?" She jumped. "I was just looking for gum. There was no gum in my purse. I told Mark everything." That night I told Erin she needed to leave by the weekend. She stormed out, packed up at 2 a.m. loudly and left. We haven't spoken since. Here's where the judgment comes in. Ever since Erin left, Mark has been off. He says he supports me, but he's been cold, quiet. He told me that I could have handled it differently, that I made his sister feel like a burden, that I embarrassed her, that I could have shown more compassion. Even his mom called to tell me that Erin cried for an hour after she left, that I humiliated her, that I tossed her out like trash. My own sister thinks I was right to set boundaries, but maybe I should have gone about it with more diplomacy. A few friends agree, but now there's tension in my marriage, and guilt on my end too. So, am I the a-hole for finally kicking her out and drawing that line? Or should I have been more patient with someone who was clearly struggling? Am I the a-hole for refusing to financially support my sister anymore after she used my money for a luxury vacation instead of rent? I, 27F, have a younger sister, Kayla, 24F, who has always lived a little on the edge. Ever since we were teenagers, she's been more into the carefree, spontaneous lifestyle, while I've always been the responsible one. The one who got a job at 16, saved money, paid my way through college, and worked my way up into a pretty decent tech career. Kayla, on the other hand, struggled with school, went through phases of jumping from job to job, and eventually ended up doing freelance social media and photography gigs, mostly weddings and influencer content. She has talent, I won't deny that, and she works hard when she has to, but she also tends to make a lot of poor financial decisions and expects others to bail her out when things go south. 2 years ago, Kayla hit a rough patch. She got evicted from her apartment after falling behind on rent. Her car broke down and she ended up moving back in with our parents. They helped where they could, but they're not in the best financial situation themselves. I stepped in, offering to loan her $1,500 to help cover a deposit on a new apartment and fix her car. I made it clear it was a loan, not a gift, she promised, to pay me back as soon as she could, and I trusted her. I figured it might take a few months, but I wasn't desperate for the money and just wanted to help her get back on her feet. Months passed. Then a year. No mention of repayment. Gently reminded her a couple of times. Each time she'd apologize, say work was slow or that something unexpected had come up, like vet bills or needing new photography equipment. I believed her, or at least I wanted to. Then, about 8 months ago, she called me crying. She said she was 3 weeks late on rent, and her landlord was threatening eviction again. I asked why she hadn't paid rent, and she admitted she'd been short on work and had to replace her laptop. I felt frustrated, but still agreed to help. I sent her $1,000 with the strict condition that she use it only for rent. I told her this would be the last time. She promised she understood. Now here's where it gets bad. Last month I opened Instagram and saw Kayla posting stories from a luxury resort in Mexico. I'm talking 5-star accommodations, poolside cocktails, beach selfies, spa treatments, the whole 9 yards. I was stunned. I sent her a text asking what was going on. She told me she'd been hired to photograph a destination wedding and that travel and lodging were comped and that it was a work trip. Okay, fine. I was still skeptical, but I let it go. But then my friend Zoe, who follows Kayla too, sent me screenshots of Kayla's private IG story, the one she only shares with her close friends. In it, she bragged about how she used the boring sister's rent money to treat herself to a mini vacation after the wedding ended early. One post literally said, "Rent paid, vibes unmatched, thank you to the boring sibling fund." I saw red. I called her immediately. She didn't answer. I sent a long, furious text demanding an explanation. She replied with a half-hearted apology and said I was blowing it out of proportion and that she needed a break for her mental health, that she had paid rent eventually and used a little of my money for fun because she deserved it. I told her that was it. No more money, no more bailouts, no more sisterly generosity. I told her I was done playing ATM for someone who disrespects me like that. She called me a selfish, bitter control freak and hung up. Since then, she's tried to guilt me through our family. My mom says I should be the bigger person and that Kayla didn't mean it, that she's just young and immature and struggling. My dad thinks I should write it off and chalk it up to experience. My older brother is the only one who's on my side. He says she's been taking advantage of me for years and that I'm right to cut her off. Now Kayla is blasting me online, calling me heartless and toxic and accusing me of punishing her for living her life. Some of our mutual friends have messaged me saying they're surprised I'm being so harsh and that it's just money and family is more important. But is it? Because to me it's not just about the money, it's about trust, about respect, about being taken seriously as a human being and not just some fallback plan for when she screws up. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for refusing to give my sister any more financial support after she used my rent money for a luxury vacation? Am I the a-hole for telling my husband's adult daughter she can't live with us while she figures things out? I, 45F, have been married to my husband, 48M, for 12 years. We've both been married before. I have a 19-year-old son, Jake, from my previous marriage who lives with us while attending community college, and he's pretty independent and responsible. My husband has a 25-year-old daughter, Sophie, from his previous marriage. She's been less independent, to put it kindly. Sophie has bounced around since she turned 18. She started college but dropped out after a year, saying it wasn't for her. Then she tried cosmetology school and quit halfway through. She's had several jobs, but never held one longer than 6 months. Most recently, she was living with her mom until they had a falling out. Again, this is like the 4th time. And now she's asking to move in with us for just a few weeks until she gets back on her feet. This has happened before. She lived with us for what was supposed to be a month after she turned 21. It turned into 11 months. During that time, she didn't help around the house, refused to get a part-time job because she was focusing on her Etsy business, which consisted of a few resin keychains she made in our garage. She left dirty dishes everywhere, used my expensive skincare without asking, left wet towels on the furniture and regularly came home past midnight, waking the whole house with her noisy entrances. When I asked her to pitch in with chores or groceries, she'd say things like, "You're not my mum," or "I'm not a kid anymore, stop controlling me." But then she'd ask for money, steal Jake's snacks, or expect me to cook for her. Eventually, my husband and I had to sit her down and tell her she needed to move out. It was a nightmare. She cried, called me evil, and said I never accepted her. My husband and I argued for weeks afterward, and though he agreed she was taking advantage, he also said I was too harsh. Fast forward to now, she called my husband crying, saying she got into a huge fight with her mum, details vague as always, and she has nowhere to go. My husband, being the softy he is, immediately said, "Of course you can stay here." He told me after the fact. I said no, flat out. Not unless we agree on ground rules and a strict timeline this time. I said I want her to sign a written agreement. 30 days max, must get a job within 2 weeks, help with chores, no borrowing money, no entering our room, and no taking my stuff. I said if she can't agree, she can't move in. My husband looked at me like I had grown a second head and said, "She's family, she's in crisis. You're acting like this is a business arrangement." I told him, last time she acted like a guest at a hotel who didn't want to pay her bill. If she's going to live here, it is a business arrangement. He accused me of not caring about Sophie and said, "You wouldn't say this if Jake needed help." I said Jake helps out, works part-time, pays for his own stuff, and respects our space. Sophie has never done any of that. Sophie hasn't moved in yet, but the pressure is intense. She's texting me things like, "I can't believe you're keeping me from my own father, and I thought you were better than this." Her mum even messaged me saying I'm tearing their family apart. My husband is moody and distant, barely speaking to me. He says I'm putting conditions on love. I don't think I'm doing that. I just don't want a repeat of the last time. I'm tired. This is my home too, but now I'm wondering, am I being too cold? Is it wrong to expect rules for someone living in our house, even if she's family? Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for refusing to give up my dog even though my fiancé's son is allergic? Hey Reddit, I'm in a situation that has completely torn my life apart over the past few weeks, and I honestly don't know if I'm doing the right thing anymore. I, 32 Wenm, have been engaged to my fiancée, Laura, 35F, for the past 8 months. We've been together for about 3 years, and things have been going mostly great. She's smart, funny, beautiful, and has an 8-year-old son named Ethan from a previous relationship. I've grown to care deeply for both of them. The issue? I have a dog named Max. Max is a 5-year-old golden retriever I adopted when he was a puppy. He's my best friend. I got him when I was going through a pretty rough time in my life, lost my job, went through a breakup, had to move back in with my parents. Max was my rock during those years. He's been with me through depression, unemployment, loss, and everything in between. He sleeps at the foot of my bed, joins me on runs, and is a big part of my routine. He's incredibly well-behaved, friendly, trained, and honestly the sweetest animal I've ever met. When Laura and I started dating, I was upfront about Max from the beginning. She met him early on, and while she never seemed particularly fond of dogs, she wasn't hostile either. She said she wasn't a dog person, but respected that Max meant a lot to me. I figured that was good enough. Fast forward to this year, Laura and I got engaged and decided that once my lease was up, I would move into her house. She owns a nice 3-bedroom home in a suburb with a yard. Perfect for Max, I thought. But shortly after we started planning the move, she brought up her concerns about Max living with us full-time. Apparently, Ethan had developed a mild allergy to dogs. Nothing extreme, but he would get sniffly and itchy when he spent extended time around Max. I offered to take Ethan to an allergist and see what we could do to manage it. Medications, HEPA filters, special cleaning routines, etc. I even offered to limit Max to certain parts of the house to reduce Ethan's exposure. But Laura didn't seem open to that. She became more and more insistent that Max wouldn't be a good fit for our new family home. She said things like, "Ethan has to come first. This is his home, and you need to make a choice between a dog and your future." I was stunned. I asked her point blank, "Are you asking me to give up Max?" And she said yes. She said if I really loved her and wanted to build a life with her and her son, I'd be willing to rehome Max, give him to a friend, a family member, even a no-kill shelter if it came to that. I told her absolutely not. But Pest is family to me. I don't have kids yet. He is my kid. The idea of giving him up just because he might cause some mild allergies seemed unthinkable to me, especially when there are so many ways we could manage the situation. This sparked a massive argument. She said I was being selfish and choosing a dog over a child, that any real partner would prioritize the health and comfort of a child over a pet, that I was showing her I wasn't ready for a blended family, and that she couldn't trust me to put Ethan first. I told her I was more than willing to work around Ethan's allergies, but I wasn't going to abandon Max. I reminded her that I had Max long before we started planning a life together, that I've always been upfront about how important he is to me, and that I'd never agreed to rehoming him. She called me stubborn and cold, said she needed space. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, things have spiraled. She moved me to the guest room when I'm at her house. She's cold, distant, and refuses to talk about the wedding. Her sister texted me saying I was being unreasonable and that a real man would prioritize the kid. Her mother called me a boy playing house and accused me of being emotionally unstable for being so attached to an animal. My own parents are divided. My dad thinks I should stick to my guns, but my mum says I should compromise for love. Even Ethan, sweet kid by the way, asked me the other day, "Why is Max more important than me?" That crushed me. But here's the thing. I love Max. I can't just give him away. I can't betray the loyalty he's given me all these years. And I do love Ethan. I want to be part of his life. But I feel like there has to be a way to make it work without giving up my best friend. I've suggested every compromise I can think of. Keeping Max out of Ethan's room, weekly deep cleans, air purifiers, even allergy shots for Ethan. But Laura isn't having it. It's all or nothing for her. She says my refusal shows I don't love her or Ethan enough, but to me this feels like emotional blackmail. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for cancelling my wedding after discovering what my fiancé and his friends planned for my bachelorette weekend? Hi Reddit, I never thought I'd be the kind of person to post here, but here I am. I, 27F, recently cancelled my wedding, 3 weeks before the big day, and now my phone hasn't stopped blowing up with angry texts from my ex-fiancé's family and even some of our mutual friends. I've been told that I'm overreacting, immature and even vindictive, and I'm seriously starting to doubt myself, even though I feel like what I did was justified. So, am I the a-hole? I was supposed to get married to my now ex-fiancé, Jake, 30 members this May. We'd been together for about 4 years and engaged for just under a year. We met at a friend's birthday party and hit it off quickly. He was charming, confident, funny, and really good at making me feel safe and loved, at least in the beginning. About 6 months into our relationship, I met his tight-knit group of friends, 4 guys he went to college with who called themselves the Wolfpack. I know, cringy. At first I found it endearing and they seemed harmless, but over time I started to notice some red flags. Their group dynamic was weird. They talked a lot about tests and vetting the women they dated. I once heard one of them say to another guy, "She passed the Vegas test, bro," and everyone laughed. I didn't know what that meant, and when I asked Jake later, he brushed it off as an inside joke. Fast forward to last year when Jake and I got engaged. We had a beautiful proposal at a vineyard, and everything felt magical for a while. We started planning our wedding, set the date, booked the venue, and sent out the invites. But behind the scenes, I started to feel increasingly uneasy. Jake's friends were heavily involved in everything. Too involved, honestly. They would jokingly criticize my dress choices, make snide comments about the budget, and one of them even told me during my own engagement party that he hoped I was cool with Jake doing whatever he wants at his bachelor party because we have a reputation to uphold. I laughed it off, but the comment stuck with me. I brought it up to Jake a few days later, and he insisted they were just teasing and that I had nothing to worry about. He promised they were going to some remote cabin, grilling steaks, fishing, and just being dudes. He swore up and down it wasn't going to be some sleazy Vegas thing. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I even confided in my maid of honor, my best friend of 15 years, Emily, and she encouraged me to trust my gut. But then something happened that changed everything. 3 weeks ago, I had my bachelorette weekend. It was a low-key affair. Spa treatments, wine tasting, a beach day, nothing wild. We rented a house and just enjoyed each other's company. On the second night, we were having some drinks and playing Never Have I Ever, just silly stuff, when one of the bridesmaids, Jenna, suddenly went quiet. She looked uncomfortable, and when I asked what was wrong, she hesitated, then said, "I think you should know something, and I only know this because my boyfriend is in Jake's friend group." She proceeded to tell me that Jake and the Wolfpack had planned something for my bachelorette weekend, not his. I was confused until she explained. They had a game they used to play in college where they'd mess with their friends' girlfriends to test loyalty. They'd try to set up fake scenarios, like having a guy hit on the girl to see if she would cheat or get too friendly, or planting fake evidence to see if she'd freak out. According to Jenna, the guys thought it would be funny to mess with me during my bachelorette weekend by hiring an actor to pretend to be a flirty neighbor at the beach house just to see how I'd react. They even joked about setting up cameras to catch my reaction, and while it wasn't confirmed whether they actually followed through with the cameras, Jenna said she overheard enough to believe it was a real plan. I was stunned. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or scream. Who does that? When I got back home, I confronted Jake. I expected him to deny it, to act confused, or maybe even apologize. But instead he rolled his eyes and said, "Babe, it was just a harmless prank. You're taking this way too seriously. We weren't actually going to do anything, it was a joke." I told him how humiliated and betrayed I felt, that it wasn't about the prank but the intent, the complete lack of trust and respect, that the idea of my future husband thinking it was okay to test me like that was disgusting. He said I was being hysterical and that every guy does this kind of stuff. So I left. I went to Emily's house, stayed there for a few days, and thought everything through. When I finally decided to call off the wedding, Jake flipped. He called me cold, manipulative, and accused me of throwing away a perfectly good relationship over something that didn't even happen. His friends joined in. They started messaging me, saying I ruined Jake's life, that I embarrassed him, that I made him look like an idiot after everything he did for me. His mother called me a spoiled little brat, and his sister said I would regret this for the rest of my life. Own family is on my side. My parents said they were proud of me for standing up for myself. Emily and the rest of my bridesmaids have been supportive too. But the onslaught from Jake's circle has been overwhelming, and it's making me question if I acted too rashly. Maybe I should have talked it through more. Maybe I should have waited until the dust settled. Maybe I am being dramatic. I don't know anymore. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for ruining my cousin's wedding because I wouldn't let her humiliate my sister? This happened a few months ago, and honestly, I'm still trying to process it all. It's like something out of a soap opera, and even now my family. I was split down the middle about whether I was out of line or if I was the only one behaving like a decent human being. So for context, I, 28M, have a younger sister, Natalie, 24F. We're really close. Our parents divorced when I was 14 and she was 10, and I kind of became her emotional anchor. We've always had each other's backs. Natalie's had a tough time growing up. She struggled with her confidence, body image, and anxiety, especially in high school. She was bullied a lot and spent a good part of her college years in therapy working through all of it. She's doing so much better now. She graduated with honors, works in tech, and is in a stable relationship with a great guy. But she's still sensitive about public attention, especially large crowds. She hates being in the spotlight. She dresses modestly and avoids being the center of attention if she can help it. She's just not into that kind of energy, which is why what happened at my cousin Jessica's wedding was such a disaster. Jessica, 30F, and I grew up together. We were close when we were younger, but she always had a bit of a mean streak. She liked gossip and drama, and she could be cruel if she thought it would earn her a laugh or attention. As adults, we drifted apart. I tolerated her at family events, but we weren't particularly close anymore. Natalie, on the other hand, was always wary of Jessica. She'd made Natalie cry more than once as a kid, mocking her weight, calling her names, stuff like that. Fast forward to this year. Jessica got engaged to this guy named Ben. I don't know him super well, but he seemed like an okay guy, quiet, laid back, maybe a little too willing to go along with whatever Jessica wanted. Their wedding was set for early spring, and I was surprised when Jessica called and asked me to be a groomsman. I said yes, mostly because I didn't want to cause drama. Natalie was also invited, and we planned to attend together. 2 weeks before the wedding, Jessica invited all the bridesmaids and groomsmen to her bachelorette weekend. Natalie wasn't part of the wedding party, but she came along to the pre-party since it was local and open to all invited guests. I noticed Jessica being kind of weird with Natalie, constantly nitpicking her outfit. "You're not wearing that, are you?" Teasing her about not drinking and making jokes that were clearly meant to embarrass her. Natalie laughed it off at first, but later pulled me aside and said she felt uncomfortable. I told her we didn't have to stay long, and we left early that night. I probably should have confronted Jessica then, but I didn't want to stir the pot before the wedding. In hindsight, I should have said something. Now, the day before the wedding, there's a rehearsal dinner. Jessica pulls me aside and says she wants to do something funny for the reception. She says that during the bouquet toss, instead of tossing it traditionally, she wants to fake out the crowd and then walk over and hand the bouquet directly to Natalie, as a joke. I ask what kind of joke that is, and Jessica smirks and says something like, "Well, you know, she's the only single girl there, and she's always been the shy one. I thought it'd be funny to playfully pressure her a bit, maybe give her a confidence boost." I told her flat out, "That's not funny, that's humiliating." She brushed me off and said I was being too sensitive, that it was just a joke, and Natalie would laugh it off. I warned her not to do it. I said if she pulled something like that, she'd regret it. She rolled her eyes and walked off. Now the wedding day comes. Everything's going okay. I keep an eye on Natalie, and she's mostly keeping to herself but seems happy. She looked beautiful, honestly, in a simple dark green dress and a soft updo. She was doing her best to be social, even danced a little, with me and her boyfriend. Then the bouquet toss happens. Jessica fakes the throw, everyone laughs. Then she walks straight to Natalie, who is standing toward the back near a table, and theatrically hands her the bouquet with a big grin on her face and says loudly, "You'll need this more than anyone." There was a second of awkward silence before a few people laughed. I saw Natalie's face turn beet red. She froze, clutched the bouquet, then muttered something and bolted out of the hall. Her boyfriend looked stunned and ran after her. I was livid. I walked up to Jessica and said, "That was completely uncalled for. I told you not to do that." She tried to laugh it off and said, "Oh, come on, it was just a bit of fun." I didn't even argue. I just said, "I'm done," took off my boutonniere, tossed it on the table and walked out. Natalie was outside crying in her boyfriend's arms. She was trying to apologize for ruining the moment, and that's when I saw red. I went back in, took the mic from the DJ and said, "Hey everyone, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say it's really cool when a bride goes out of her way to mock someone she invited to her wedding. That bouquet stunt wasn't funny. It was cruel, and it humiliated someone who came here just to support her. So if anyone's wondering why the groom's side is missing a groomsman, now you know. Enjoy your evening." Then I left again. Half the guests were in shock. A few clapped awkwardly. Some were staring daggers at me. The fallout was immediate. Jessica blew up my phone the next day, leaving voicemails calling me a selfish asshole who made her wedding about me. Her mom, my aunt, told my mom I'd destroyed her daughter's happiest day. My mom is mortified and thinks I should apologize to keep the peace. My dad, though, quietly told me he was proud of me. Natalie has been incredibly grateful and says I did the right thing, but she still feels guilty, like she was the reason everything blew up. Jessica hasn't spoken to me since. Apparently, she's told everyone I ruined her wedding out of jealousy. Some cousins have taken her side and unfollowed me on social media. Others have reached out privately and said they were glad someone called her out. Now I keep thinking, did I go too far? Could I have handled it more diplomatically? Was I the a-hole for putting Jessica on blast in front of everyone and walking out of the wedding? Or was it justified, given what she did to my sister? I, 30F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I'm the middle child of 3 siblings, my older sister Claire, 34F, me, and our younger brother Jeremy, 27M. Our parents are divorced, and we grew up primarily with our mom, who worked 2 jobs and leaned heavily on us to help out around the house. From a young age, I was the one expected to pick up the slack. Claire was always more independent, out with friends, doing her own thing. Jeremy was the baby, and my mom let him get away with everything. That left me in the middle, the reliable one. The one who cooked dinner at 13, helped Jeremy with his homework and kept the house semi-functional while Mom worked late. I resented it, but it also shaped me. I got good at handling things. I got a scholarship, moved out at 18, graduated college early, and started working in marketing. I met my now husband, Andrew, 33M, and we got married 3 years ago. We live in a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs. No kids yet, but we're thinking about it in the next couple years. This story starts last summer when my sister Claire had a complete life meltdown. She'd been living in another state with her fiancé, Marcus. They'd been together for almost 5 years, but from everything I'd seen, the relationship had always been unstable. Claire has a tendency to be dramatic. She thrives on chaos. Marcus wasn't much better. There were constant fights, breakups, reconciliations. I mostly stayed out of it, but last June Claire called me crying. Marcus had cheated on her again, and this time she was done for real. She didn't want to stay in the same city. She didn't want to live in her apartment. She asked if she could stay with me and Andrew for a little while, until she got back on her feet. Now here's where I might already start to sound like the a-hole. I didn't want to say yes. I'd hosted Claire before. Over the years, she'd crashed. With me during other breakups, job losses, health scares. Every time it was stressful. She didn't clean up after herself. She'd mope all day, party all night, invite friends over unannounced. She never paid for anything unless asked, and she never ever left when she said she would. A week would become a month would become 3. So this time I hesitated, but Andrew, who's much more forgiving than I am, said, "She's your sister. You can't leave her homeless. Let's just give it 2 weeks tops." So I said yes. Claire arrived 2 days later with so much stuff. It was like she brought everything she owned. Clothes, plants, boxes of books, paintings, a giant mirror, a keyboard, a ring light, and 6 bags of essential oils and healing crystals. She took over the guest bedroom, filled up the guest bathroom, and immediately made herself at home. The first week was okay. She stayed in bed a lot, cried, watched Netflix, occasionally made a smoothie or microwaved something, and then left her dishes in the sink. I gave her space, even made her tea a couple times. I figured she needed to grieve, but by the end of week 2 I started asking questions. Was she applying to jobs, looking for apartments, making plans? Claire waved me off. I just need a little more time. I can't think about logistics yet. I'm still processing. Okay, fine, but then a month went by. Then 2. She didn't contribute to groceries. She never helped clean. She used up our laundry detergent, shampoo, tampons, and never replaced anything. She also started hosting weird sound healing sessions with friends in our living room on weekends. Literally, I'd come downstairs to strangers lying on yoga mats with my sister, banging on a gong and telling someone their root chakra was imbalanced. Andrew thought it was funny at first, but I didn't. This was our home. We both worked full-time, and it felt like we were living in someone else's wellness retreat. I asked Claire again about her plans. She snapped. You said I could stay until I was back on my feet. Well, I'm not. Stop pressuring me. That's when I set a deadline. I told her she had 6 weeks to move out. I said I'd help her apartment hunt and even offered to pay the first month's rent somewhere. She got mad, really mad. She accused me of abandoning her, said I was acting just like Mom, and locked herself in the guest room for 2 days. Then she started going behind my back. She'd wait until Andrew got home and talk to him instead. She'd cry to him about how much she'd lost, how alone she felt, how I was being cruel and cold. Andrew started to feel guilty. He told me we should extend the deadline another month. I said no. So Claire started retaliating in small ways. She'd accidentally eat the lunches I prepped for work. She'd leave wet towels on the bathroom floor. She stopped saying thank. You stopped making eye contact. When my parents came over for dinner, she made snide comments. Well, I guess some people care about appearances more than family. It all boiled over one night in December. I had just gotten home from work, and Claire had one of her friends over. They were blasting music in the kitchen, burning sage, and making something in my Dutch oven. The whole house reeked of cumin and incense. I asked Claire if she could please be quieter. I had a migraine. She rolled her eyes and said, God, maybe if you relaxed once in a while, you wouldn't be such a bitter, uptight bitch. That was it. I told her she had 2 weeks, no extensions. She needed to leave. She screamed at me, said I was heartless, said I loved control more than people, that she hoped I never had to know what it felt like to be alone. Then she stormed out. She stayed at a friend's for the rest of the week and came back only to get her stuff, which she did dramatically and loudly, crying the whole time and telling Andrew she never felt safe here. My mum took her side. She called me the next day to say she was deeply disappointed in how I handled things, that Claire had been through a traumatic breakup and I should have been more patient. Jeremy, my brother, said I kinda snapped, but ultimately agreed I wasn't wrong. Andrew still seems conflicted. He says he supports me, but he also misses Claire and thinks I could have tried harder to meet her halfway. So now I'm stuck wondering, was I too harsh? Was I too focused on boundaries and not enough on compassion? I haven't spoken to Claire since January. She's now renting a room with a couple friends across town and has blocked me on Instagram. My mom is still frosty with me. Family gatherings are tense, and Andrew's been more distant, like he's afraid I'll throw him out next if he missteps. So, am I the a-hole for kicking my sister out of my house when she clearly wasn't ready to be on her own? Am I the a-hole for cutting off my sister after she made my wedding about her infertility struggles? I, 29F, got married 2 months ago to my husband Dylan, 31 Mem. And what should have been the happiest day of my life still feels like it's been tarnished beyond repair, all because of my older sister, Laura, 35F. To give some background, Laura and I have had a complicated relationship over the years. She's always been intense. Not cruel or malicious, just deeply emotional, and in her own words, highly sensitive. She and her husband have been trying to have a baby for nearly 7 years, and it's been incredibly hard on them. She's had multiple miscarriages, unsuccessful, IVF attempts, and was recently told by her doctor that her chances of conceiving naturally were next to none. I'm not heartless. I've cried with her, driven her to doctor's appointments, donated to her GoFundMe when they were raising money for IVF. I even paid for a portion of one of her procedures, no strings attached. I love my sister, and I've wanted her to have a child more than anything. But over the years, it's become a defining part of her identity, to the point where any joy I experienced that she couldn't partake in was somehow an attack on her. So when Dylan proposed last year, my first call was to Laura. She was happy at first, even cried and told me how proud she was. But as wedding planning picked up, things started to shift. The first red flag was when she refused to be my maid of honor. I just don't think I'm in a place to stand in front of people and celebrate something so traditionally feminine, she told me. I was hurt, but I respected it. I asked my best friend Rachel instead, and Laura said she was happy just being a bridesmaid. Then came the bridal shower. Laura showed up 45 minutes late and left an hour early. During the time she was there, she barely participated in any of the games, sat quietly in the corner and gave me a card that said, "I'm trying to be happy for you, but I'm struggling. Please don't take it personally." Again, I tried to be understanding. I sent her a message afterward telling her I loved her and I hoped she was okay. She left me on read. Then came the actual wedding weekend. This is where everything truly blew up. Our rehearsal dinner was on Friday evening. Laura showed up in a floor-length white dress with sparkles. I'm not kidding. It wasn't even subtle. She looked like she was heading to a red carpet. My mom pulled her aside and gently told her that it wasn't appropriate. Laura apparently got defensive and said she wasn't thinking about the color and just wore what made her feel confident. The day of the wedding, Laura showed up late to hair and makeup. She didn't want the artist to do too much and insisted on doing her own makeup in the corner. Fine, she also refused to take group photos before the ceremony, saying she was having a moment and needed time to herself. But nothing prepared me for what happened during the reception. Dylan and I had just finished our first dance. The atmosphere was perfect, candles lit, everyone glowing from the ceremony, music soft and beautiful. My dad had just given a speech that made me tear up, and Rachel, my MOH, got up to speak next. Then Laura stood up. Without warning. She wasn't scheduled to speak. She hadn't asked me or anyone else. She just grabbed the mic and started talking. "Just wanted to say something," she began. "I know today is about my name and Dylan, and I'm happy for them. But it's been really hard to be here, and I think it's important that we also recognize those who are struggling in silence." The room was dead silent. Everyone turned to face her. I could feel Dylan stiffen beside me. I've spent the last 7 years trying to become a mom. Watching people get what you want so easily, watching your own sister get to live a life you've begged for, it hurts. And while I'm happy for her, I'm also grieving today. And I just wanted to say, if anyone else is grieving, I see you, you're not alone. She ended her impromptu speech by raising her glass. Some people clapped awkwardly. Most were just confused. Rachel was speechless. My dad looked mortified. I was stunned. Absolutely stunned. I didn't confront her at the wedding. I didn't want to create a scene. But later that night, when Dylan and I were alone, I broke down sobbing. I had kept my patience for months, but she had taken my once-in-a-lifetime day and made it about her pain. After we got back from our honeymoon, I called Laura. I told her that I loved her, but what she did at my wedding was deeply inappropriate and selfish. That her speech felt like a slap in the face and hijacked what should have been a joyful moment for me and Dylan. She didn't apologize. She said, "I knew you'd make this about you. You have everything now. You couldn't spare one moment of your happiness to make space for my grief." That was when I snapped. I told her that I had been making space for her grief for years, but she had made no space for my joy. That I was done walking on eggshells and letting her trauma dictate how I'm allowed to experience milestones in my life. That her infertility does not give her license to emotionally manipulate everyone around her. We haven't spoken since. My parents are now involved. My mom says I need to forgive her, that she wasn't in her right mind. My dad is more neutral, but thinks I shouldn't have attacked her when I know she's fragile. Some family members think I was cruel for cutting her off. Others have told me they admired my restraint and that Laura's behavior was out of line. Dylan supports me 100%. Rachel does too. But some days I feel this crushing guilt, like maybe I am the a-hole for turning my back on someone who's in pain. But I also feel like if I don't draw this boundary now, I'll never have permission to prioritize my own life. So, am I the a-hole?